Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are continuing our breakdown of the San Francisco 49ers 2024 NFL Draft class. We've already gone through Ricky Pearsall, Renardo Green, Dominic Cooney, and Malik Mustafa, and we find ourselves at arguably the most contentious pick of them all. That wasn't a first-round pick or a second-round pick. Another Kyle Shanahan mid-round running back in Isaac Gurerendo. Before we dive into Guerendo's breakdown and his scouting report, please hit that like button. And if you can, on the audio versions, leave a review. It is the easiest and freest way to help the show. And if you like the content, again, hit that like button, leave that review, and tell your friends about the show. And without further ado, let's dive into Isaac Gurerendo, the newest running back of the San Francisco 49ers. Gurerendo was taken in round number 4, 129th overall, and the San Francisco 49ers traded up, I believe, in the 4th round to select Gurerendo out of Louisville. He was Dane Brugler had him in the 4th and 5th round range. San Francisco grabbed him in the 4th round, so kind of that sweet spot for Isaac Gurerendo. And I would not be shocked if many people didn't just roll their eyes at this pick. But I also wouldn't be shocked if a lot of people didn't know who Isaac Gurerendo was pre-NFL Draft Combine. He was a player that he hadn't played much. There wasn't much tape on him, wasn't much film on the Louisville product. He transferred from Wisconsin to Louisville last season and had his best year of his college football career. I did play 5 years in college, but again, hasn't played much due to injury and hasn't been a lead back for many teams. So pre-combine, I'm sure not just Niner fans, but NFL fans as a whole, if you aren't a draft nut, you probably didn't know who Isaac Gurerendo was. But as soon as that combine happened and he blew everybody out of the water, literally left the combine with nearly 99th percentile in every single category. He was phenomenal in how he tested. After the combine, shut up draft boards. Everyone started to take notice of Isaac Gurerendo. But I am someone who, while yes, testing matters, well, yes, you can take combine and pro day testing into account in what a player could be. And usually I would reserve a late day 3 pick or rounds 5 through 7 for players that test really well, but the tape just isn't there. The difference is with Gurerendo, he tested extremely well, again 99th percentile in many categories, especially in short yardage, explosion and acceleration. In his tape, while limited, you can see flashes of what Kyle Shanahan wants in an offensive player, especially a running back. And I talked to you during the Ricky Pearsall breakdown, was that I had 2 players on my draft board that I just said, 2 Kyle Shanahan guys, whether it be quarterback, receiver, tight end, running back. I had 2 players of the entire draft board. And I said, these 2 guys just scream Kyle Shanahan. One of those was Ricky Pearsall. The other one was Isaac Gurerendo. When I watched his tape back in February, I just said, whoa, this is the epitome of a Kyle Shanahan guy. And you can go back on my Twitter or on my X and you can see I have a tweet that says, let me introduce Niner fans to Isaac Gurerendo. And it was like, here you go. Pay attention to this guy. And lo and behold, San Francisco, mainly Kyle Shanahan, said, I got to have him on my team. I was not shocked at this pick, although I wasn't sure based on needs that they would have gone running back this early. Needed the tight end still, didn't get one. That said, I'm not going to judge Isaac Gurerendo off of not getting a tight end or missing out on a player. That's unfair to them. It's not Guerendo's fault where he was picked. Even if you are someone that rolls your eyes at this pick, I do want to try to sway you or have you buy into who Gurerendo could be as a player. Of the entire running back class, which I think is underrated, although there isn't a bulk of really good players in the group. Trey Benson comes to mind. Jonathan Brooks comes to mind. There are some players you like. But I think Isaac Gurerendo for me, out of the whole bunch, was my number one outside zone runner in the draft class, which led me to say he's a Kyle Shanahan guy. He's someone that will fight through contact. He will lower his pads. He'll lower his shoulder. He will get himself dirty. And once he leaves the game or the game's over with, you're going to see a lot of dirt on that jersey because he wants to get his hands dirty. He has pretty good vision. He's a really good pass catcher. And we did see that in the one day of rookie camp. The media was there where they didn't run the football, but he was out there as a pass catcher, showing the short yardage explosion and explosiveness that he has. He has pretty good hands. I think is someone that could step into a role as a pass catching back relatively quickly. And going back to Niner fans who might say, well, we didn't need a running back. We have Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. Mitchell is often injured, and Jordan Mason, for whatever reason, can't seem to find himself outside of playing special teams. Now, I do like myself some Jordan Mason. I am someone that still values the power running back in a rotation, but it doesn't seem like Kyle Shanahan views him in that light. And going back to Elijah Mitchell for a second, I liked Elijah Mitchell. Kyle Shanahan likes Elijah Mitchell. That said, last year of his contract, you want to get cheaper. You want to have to pay a player like that. Not that Mitchell will be too expensive, but if he asks for $4, $5, $6 million, Shanahan's not going to want to pay that, knowing he's paying McCaffrey, the premium at running back. So getting Guerendo in the room now, knowing that, well, I do think there can be an impact in year one. I wouldn't be shocked if he is behind Mitchell in year one and kind of sits and doesn't take too many hits while he tries to get his body right. But Guerendo, again, solid pass catcher, solid vision. He'll fight through contact. He'll lower his pads. And this is the one thing that has held back previous mid-round running backs Shanahan has picked, whether it's Tyrion Davis-Price, Trey Sermon, or even guys in the room now. Guerendo's a pretty capable pass blocker, so he's not going to be a liability on the field if he's asked to pass block, whereas in previous years, mid-round picks like TDP or Trey Sermon were just horrible pass blockers and made no sense as to why Shanahan wanted to pick them out of their running capabilities. Guerendo shouldn't have that problem transferring or being translatable in regards to his pass blocking on the field at the NFL level. He has the build to be not just a good running back at 6'2", 221, but also a good pass blocker that can take on linebackers and safeties. And even if he has to, defensive ends. Like, he is built very well to be a good pass blocker. Of course, you want to improve the anchor. Of course, there are things he has to improve upon, but he's a running back first, pass blocker second. But his pass blocking skills shouldn't be overlooked as a liability. He's very capable in that field. Going back to his explosiveness, he has 4.3 speed. Now, he is someone that I do think takes a while to get going. Again, when I say 4.3 speed, it's there. It is legitimately there in Isaac Gurerendo, but sometimes it does take him a little bit where, well, he does have short area explosiveness, straight line speed. He's not Xavier Worthy. He's not your John Rosses. He's not even your Raheem Mosterts where, shot out of a cannon, just gone. He's not that kind of player. Again, he's 6'2", 221. He's not Raheem Mostert's 190, right? He does have 30, 20 extra pounds on him where if you see this kid in person, he's got massive, thighs and quads and hamstrings where you can see that lower body strength is there. So it does take him a little bit to get going, but he also is carrying 20, 30 extra pounds to his build. That said, he does have the speed to separate despite maybe taking a little bit to get going in regards to kicking in that 4.3 speed. Once you get past that, first level of the defense, you get into the linebackers and the safeties, there are not many reps where he isn't pulling away from defenders. So while it might take him a little bit, he does have the speed for long runs, 60, 50, 70-yard runs where, you will see him with 5, 10 yards of separation behind safeties and cornerbacks and linebackers because he does have that 4.3 speed that can, be a weapon in a Kyle Shanahan offense. This last year at Louisville, 22 explosive runs on just 132 carries. So if you can do some quick math and percentages, 6% of his runs were explosive runs. That's really impressive. In 2023, again, his final year at Louisville, he was fourth in the ACC with 6.1 yards per carry. He was seventh in the ACC with 11 touchdowns. And if you want to go back to 2022 and say, okay, he's explosive, he's got speed, he's got the body, what else can he do? He also does have kick return versatility. And when you look at whether it's Jacob Cowing, who we'll get into next week, or other rookies, or even other players trying to find their role and niche on the roster and on the team, I think Guerendo, with the new kick return rules, he could benefit from this in the same way that Cody Schrader could as a UDFA. In 2022 at Wisconsin, he was third in the Big Ten with 454 kick return yards. He had 23.9, basically 24 yards per return. That ranked fifth in the Big Ten. So I could see Kyle Shanahan wanting to mix and match or, make Guerendo the kick return man for a little bit and see how he is out there. And to be fair, he wasn't doing kick returns at rookie camp, at least for the one day we were there. But I could see Shanahan mixing him in once OTAs and training camp begins. And I could see if they view him as a player that, doesn't have a role being an RB2 or even an RB3 in year one behind Mitchell and Mason, could he fight for the kick return role in year one to give this team a playmaker on special teams? I could see that, but I do think there is a role for him as simply a running back on the roster. Now, he's not going to start over Christian McCaffrey. By no means would I say in the next 3 seasons he will usurp and jump Christian McCaffrey unless something, injuries occur or just McCaffrey falls off a cliff, which, fingers crossed, I don't see that happening. I do think Guerendo is very capable. I just think he needs time. And the reason why I say he needs time is, one, he just hasn't really had the reps. We talked about at the beginning that Isaac Gurerendo, for as great as he tested, there just wasn't much tape on him, and there's a reason for that. Diving into his collegiate stats, you can see that he never had over 132 carries in 5 seasons in college and only had over 65 carries once in 5 seasons at Wisconsin and Louisville. His 132 carries came last year with Louisville, and before that, he was never the lead back in any room. Even in his last year at Louisville, he shared time in that running back room. So, yes, a lot to like. Yes, a lot to enjoy and say, wow, what could Isaac Gurerendo become? But also there are some drawbacks to him that make you say, well, despite that potential, despite what he could be in the NFL, there may be some things to be worried about where for the crowd that is saying another running back, you have maybe some reasons to have your reservations about Isaac Gurerendo. He's only played 10 plus games twice in 5 college seasons. Again, never was a lead back. And there is some serious injury concerns throughout his entire college career. In 2019, only played a handful of games, hurt his hamstring. In 2020, the COVID season, again, only played a handful of games, hurt his hamstring. And the next season, in 2021, he had a Liz Frank injury. So there has been some serious medical issues with Guerendo, but the hope is that, and I'll get into his pro comp in a second, and I'm sure you can see why based on the title and or the history I'm kind of reading about, is that the hope is that his best football is in front of him. Whereas the previous 2 players Shanahan drafted, Trey Sermon and TDP, their best football was behind them. And I think the clearest pro comp, the easiest pro comp, the one player that I have seen continually pro comped to Isaac Gurerendo is a former Niner running back, Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert came out, I think, at Purdue and bounced around, I think, 7 different teams, practice squads, training camp rosters, special teamers, that 4th, 5th running back off the bench due to injury, and could never find his footing in the NFL, dealt with a handful of injuries early in his career, just couldn't find himself, right? Even had a handful of injuries in San Francisco. But once Shanahan got a hold of him, got his body right, believed in Raheem Mostert, we saw what he has become with San Francisco and now with Miami, where I believe he was, if not the second, the third leading rusher in the entire NFL last season. And I'm sure if you were like myself, he was helping your fantasy football team carry you to a championship game. So I do think there is a lot to buy into in regards to, okay, he's got good vision. He's already run in a system that Shanahan likes to do, being the outside zone. He's got, again, good vision. He'll fight through contact, lower his pads. He has the grit and grind to be a running back Shanahan would like to use, similar to Elijah Mitchell in that where he'll lower his head. He will face contact head on. Guerendo will do that, and he'll also be a good pass blocker. And plus, with not much tape on him, I think there is this thought in Kyle Shanahan's head of just let me get a hold of him. It may take him a year, maybe two, but come year 3 and 4, he could be a vital or pivotal part in the offense in that running back rotational group. And I do think that, while we don't want to discuss it, and I kind of already hinted towards it, Chris McCaffrey is getting older. And I believe he's either first or second in attempts the last 2 seasons. San Francisco was unafraid to ride Christian McCaffrey all year long, and rightfully so. He's the offensive player of the year, or the reigning offensive player of the year, for a reason. He's that dynamic and he's that good at what he does. But once running backs reach the age of 30, which he's inching closer to every single day, it's harder to keep up and your body starts to break down. Now, McCaffrey does a great job taking care of himself, but I do think that with the Raheem Mostert pro comp to Isaac Gurerendo, there is some sort of, maybe we have protected ourselves or we planned ahead that Guerendo might not be an instant impact player in the backfield year 1, maybe even year 2. But once CMC hits 30, Guerendo should be ready to we can have 2 backs, where I think of teams that have had not systems like Kyle Shanahan's, but going back to successful running back tandems, Tevin Coleman and Freeman with Atlanta, who did have Kyle Shanahan calling plays for them. I think of Jerome Bettis and Willie Parker with Pittsburgh, I think in 2007 when they beat the Seahawks. Like there is, there is reasons to believe a 2 running back system could give San Francisco more oomph and firepower in a couple of years when CMC's body starts to inevitably take a turn over the 30 hump. So while I don't think the Guerendo move is a move directly for now, I do think there is an impact he can make year 1 on kick returns, maybe in a rotation if someone gets hurt. But I also think that they want to give him time to get his body right, fully recoup from those injuries a couple years ago, help him strengthen his legs, give him more mass up top while maintaining that speed and hopefully protect himself from injury. Where I would like to think, in a couple of years, they'd want him carrying the ball 132 times, 150 times for an offense that wants to run the football, 30 plus times a game, 25 plus times a game. And again, in a couple of years, hopefully reduce Christian McCaffrey's workload or have someone in the room that could inevitably take some of the workload off of Christian McCaffrey. And despite the injuries Guerendo has had, which, yes, 2 hamstring injuries back-to-back seasons, and the Liz Frank, all those being a concern, if you want to take a positive twist on that, you could also say that there's not much tread on those tires. That yes, injury concerns are clear as day, but there isn't he's not had many attempts. There's not been many bumps and bruises. There have been some strains. There's been a break of the Liz Frank, but it's not as if he's carried the ball 500 times coming out of college, where you see a lot of players that go to Bama and Georgia and other big name schools, mainly in the SEC, that like to run the football. They only last 2 to 3 years because their bodies are already worn down. That shouldn't be Guerendo. He should be a player that he can last, 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons if his body holds up. Obviously, the injuries being the main concern, but to take a positive twist on the Well, he hasn't played much. There isn't much tape. Only 132 carries in one season, that being a career high. Yeah, only 132 carries. You are essentially getting the freshest legs of the college realm that has arguably maybe the highest upside of anybody in the entire running back class this past season. So, yes, there are injury concerns. Yes, you can point to that and say, I told you so. I told you so. And we can sit here year 1, year 2, and year 3 and look back and say, what a waste of a pick. That's fine. But I do think that there is a lot more positive things to say, despite there being negative ones, about Isaac Gurerendo. And I also think that, in a perfect world, which I always say this, whether it's Dominic Puni, Mustafa, Pearsall, and Green, you want to look at what is the perfect scenario for them in year 1 or even in their career. Renardo Green would be replacing Mooney Ward, as a potential pro comp for him, right? Dominic Puni would be starting year 1 and becoming a strong right or left guard once Banks or Feliciano are gone in the future. Pearsall, instant impact player, great slot receiver, gives Shanahan 4 good receivers to work with come this year. And in year 2, if he is replacing Deebo Samuel or others in that room, mainly Juwan Jennings, okay, cool. He's ready to go, and you haven't lost a step. Obviously, we have no idea how all those picks will transpire and how all those picks will relate and translate to the NFL. But for Guerendo, a perfect world would be year 1 is a kick returner / RB3 in that room, and eventually in year 1 takes over Elijah Mitchell's job and becomes the RB2, because once Elijah Mitchell's contract's up after this season, you let him go. Maybe you get a comp pick for Mitchell, and you have Guerendo waiting in the wings ready to go. I do think that Guerendo is really good at hitting the holes. You want him to be a little more decisive in his runs, but the short yardage explosiveness is there. I talked about it in the rookie camp review I had out. This is coming out on Friday, so on Tuesday, I believe, I talked about that Guerendo as a pass catcher, it's one step and he's already, 3 steps ahead of the other guys. So you can see the short yardage explosiveness on display in just one practice. And I think that if he continues to display that and show that, his trajectory up the depth chart should be relatively, I don't want to say easy, but smoother than most running backs that have been in this room in the past. Trey Sermon struggled, and he had to play his first year because Mostert and Wilson Jr. got hurt and others got hurt. And he was eventually kind of outshined by Elijah Mitchell. And TDP was buried behind, I think, Wilson and Mitchell, then eventually Christian McCaffrey, and couldn't find his footing. So I don't think Guerendo's going to have that problem. And I do think because the new kick return rule, he should be able to find a role relatively quick and hopefully expound upon that and hopefully build upon that in the upcoming weeks, months, and years. Where, when I look at Isaac Gurerendo, and this is the one thing with drafting running backs, is that you can usually clear as day see, okay, this guy's a third down back, change of pace back. And despite the injury history Guerendo has, I don't put those labels on him. While yes, he's probably more of a change of pace back because of the speed he has compared to a third down player, I also think because he can pass block, because he has good hands, and because if he can improve the vision and the decisiveness, he's got the makeup and the build to be, a 2-down back. Where he is, a vital part of a rotation that can make your offense really explosive and can give Shanahan more weapons to work with. Where, in the business of the NFL in 2024, every offense is trying to find more weapons. They're trying to find more explosiveness, and they're trying to find more players that make their offense dynamic. And I think when you look at San Francisco, yes, they have Kyle Shanahan and Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings, and you see the additions of Ricky Pearsall and Isaac Gurerendo, you can see Kyle Shanahan saying, okay, these moves might be for the future in regards to replacing a current starter on the team. But also I think that they are moves that can make the offense more dynamic, more explosive, give them more speed, give Shanahan more weapons, where in year 1 and year 2 of these players, if not further on down the line, they cannot just be starters. They cannot just be, mainstays in the offense, but they can also help you win a championship, and they can be the difference maker. Where the past couple seasons, for Guerendo's sake, there really hasn't been a reliable running back two. Pre-Christian McCaffrey, it was Elijah Mitchell, a sixth-round pick, who after his rookie season became often injured, but also fell apart at the end of his rookie season, and it was JaMychal Hasty behind him. That's not good enough. Christian McCaffrey gets here, Mitchell's still often injured, the people you draft don't hit, and then it's Jordan Mason, who I like Jordan Mason. I can argue San Francisco has 4 viable running backs in that room, with the Offensive Player of the Year leading the way. And look, I also would not be shocked if Kyle Shanahan doesn't trade one of the people in that room, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was Elijah Mitchell, especially if Guerendo looks good in preseason. Shanahan's never been afraid to play the hot hand. Obviously, you're not going to bench Christian McCaffrey, but Shanahan's never been afraid to cut ties or trade a player if he finds a replacement behind them or they're buried somewhere in the depth chart. So if Guerendo outshines Mitchell in training camp and preseason and OTAs, I can see Shanahan saying, okay, give me a 5th-round pick for a 6th-round pick player we took a couple of years ago. I could see Shanahan trying to get a 7th or 6th-round pick for Jordan Mason. Now, obviously, would I do that? Probably not, but who knows what? I think Patrick Paul is the guy they drafted or signed from Green Bay, or Patrick Taylor, excuse me. What does he look like? What does Cody Schrader look like? This room is 6 running backs deep now, and a lot of those guys have had success elsewhere on special teams or at the collegiate level. So there's many areas in which this running back room can go, but I have a hard time believing Guerendo is not going to be a leader of that pack behind CMC, come the end of year 1. I think Guerendo has the build, the makeup to not be a franchise running back. I'm not saying that. Don't bite my head off. I just think he could be either a really good RB2 or he could be in the mix like Kyle Shanahan had with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, or even in like an Alfred Morris, right? Where at the peak of his career, Shanahan was getting a lot out of a guy like Alfred Morris and even brought him into San Francisco. So I truly do believe that, while Guerendo does have some knocks on his game, there are things he will need to improve upon. He's by no means a perfect prospect. I do think his stature, 6 foot 221, that screams, body built for the NFL. He has the speed to separate from defenders. And I just think that for him and for San Francisco, it might just be biding time until they can either get rid of Elijah Mitchell or watch that contract expire come season end. But I think the future is pretty bright for Isaac Gurerendo in San Francisco. I think he went to the perfect system for him. I think, again, there was one running back on my entire board. I said, Kyle Shanahan guy, he'll be a Niner. It was Isaac Gurerendo. So I am really excited to watch him play. I've seen him once in person. And again, that one day I was like, yep, I can see why he's here. In the pass catching versatility, the pass catching ability was already on display. And you'll see if you go to OTAs, go to minicamp, go to training camp and practice, you will see that he has really quick burst up the field in short yardage situations. And I think you'll like and fall in love with Guerendo very quickly and go, yep, I see potential in that player. But I do like his pro comp, Raheem Mostert. It just makes sense. But like Raheem, I do think a year or two, it might take Guerendo to get to that level unless he is doing kick returns in year 1. All that said, I like this pick a lot. I think I gave it a B in my draft grades. I like Guerendo. I like his makeup. I like his potential. And I think he could be something in San Francisco alongside Chris McCaffrey in a perfect world in a really good backfield for the Niners in the upcoming future. All that to say, thank you so much for watching, listening. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to go to baseball games, NBA playoff games, NFL schedule's already out. If you want to buy your tickets, you want to go to opening night against the Jets, Rodgers, Purdy, Shanahan, Saleh, basically the San Francisco 49ers against the New York 49ers. You want to watch that matchup week 1 at Levi Stadium. Use our promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And again, thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.